Welcome, everyone. It's great to be here on this Thursday evening. This is the panel called Roots of Solidarity, from Japanese American Redress to Black Reparations. We are the Nikkei Progressives and Nikkei Civil Rights and Redress Reparations Committee. And it's great to have you. And we're really excited to have a conversation between organizers tonight and hopefully a lot of engagement from the audience. So the purpose of this conversation is to essentially discuss our coalition's work on fighting for Black reparations, how Japanese Americans' direct experience with incarceration and reparations can help support the demands of Black Americans, and the experiences of working in coalition with other organizers amidst the push for H.R.40 and the ongoing work of the California Reparations Task Force. So we'll sort of share some experiences about multiracial organizing around redress in the 1960s through the 1980s, and also the legacy and continuation of the fight for Black reparations today. So it's lovely to be here, and we'll shortly introduce everybody on the panel. But first, I just wanted to say, in addition to our gratitude to Dadaima for allowing us to be here tonight, just wanted to say just a very few words about the situation ongoing right now in Palestine. Our discussion tonight will cover, discussions about state violence, about reparations, and it seems like it at least must be mentioned into the air tonight that there's ongoing struggle for liberation that is very related to the stuff that we're talking about today. I don't think any of us on this panel are necessarily experts on the issues, but there are many great teach-ins that have been happening about the situation in Palestine. So very much recommend looking those up. As we're going to talk about political education tonight, it's another great thing to look out for. So that said, we would like to start with some introductions for everyone that's here. So we'd like to start with a little bit of like a lightning round of a self-intro for everybody. So if everyone can share their names, their pronouns, and then a very short sort of thoughts on the question, what are some of the reasons you do this work? So I can start us off since I'm already talking. So my name is Michael. I use he, him pronouns. I'm an organizer with Nikkei Progressives and this coalition. Why I do this work? I think it's grounded in a sense of justice, of something that is owed to Black Americans, particularly, and something that will make, I think, all of us feel like we live in a place that values justice and equity in our values that we believe in. Great, so I can pass to Miyako.
Okay, hi, I'm Miyako. I use she, her pronouns, and I work with Nikkei Progressives, mainly on the Reparations Joint Committee with NCRR. And some of the reasons that I do this work is, first of all, because I've seen how reparations has so greatly impacted the Japanese American community. And I'm also inspired by all of the folks who came before me in the Japanese American activism, who continue to fight for reparations today. And then I'm passing to Kay.
Thank you, Miyako. My name is Kay Ochi. I'm she, her pronouns. I'm zooming in today from San Diego, California, which is Kumeyae land. And I am a Sansei, third generation Japanese American. I had the privilege of going to college during the 60s and experienced a civil rights movement. And it sort of just rolled right into as part of my life until 1981. You're going to hear more about the commission hearings during tonight's program, but it wasn't until 81 that my eyes were opened to the injustices that the Japanese American community suffered during World War II and the extent of it. The travesty was unbelievable. And because of their experience, I'm heightened in sensitivity and awareness to all of the injustices to the people around me, my friends, my neighbors, the communities. And it's a privilege to share space with all of you, and particularly with Kenneth, because, she's our friend now, and we've learned a lot from her. And I'll toss it to Kenneth.
Thank you so much, Kay. My name is Kenneth Henry, and I am here from Baltimore, Maryland, so I'm a few hours ahead of you. But it is indeed an honor and a privilege to be in your space anytime I can be amongst you. I readily accept those invitations. Why do I do what I do? 400 plus years of pernicious history of my ancestors and my elders and current day vestiges, and nothing has changed in this country, who is guilty of the most horrific of crimes against humanity, refuse to acknowledge that they have been the perpetrators of so many harms against people of African descent. And they have done nothing to correct those harms. And yet still, just real quickly, I look around and $105 billion goes here and $95 billion goes someplace else. And yet and still here in this country, we still deal with such things as intergenerational poverty. So I am indeed ride or die. I will be fighting this fight and being involved in this movement for the rest of my life. Thank you. And I'm going to popcorn it to Ben.
Thanks, Kenneth. Yeah, and just really quickly, I want to just acknowledge Kenneth again. So thank you so much for being here, Kenneth, and being in conversation with us Nikkei Progressives, NCRR folks, because it's such an honor and privilege and just such a fun time talking to you and being in community with you. So Kenneth is just phenomenal, inspirational, like really leader of this reparations movement, doing incredible work through NCOBRA and elsewhere. So yes, thank you, Kenneth. But hi all, I'm Jen, pronoun she, her, and I'm also part of the Nikkei Progressive NCRR Reparations Committee. And, you know, in addition to that, I'm a student at UCLA and I study, you know, racial violence, political violence, and I guess I do this work for so many reasons, but I'll try to keep it short. One is all of the folks like in this panel, especially, you know, my elders or those older than me who are just inspiring me all the time, really showing me like, wow, you can be a lifelong organizer and just do the hard work. It is so inspiring, and I just want to try to, you know, continue that legacy as much as I can. And in terms of reparations, I mean, Kenneth said it so well. I just can't look around our society and see all of the ways that violence and discrimination, segregation, and health disparities just continue to harm our society, the Black Americans in our societies. And it's just, as like a teacher or just as a person, I feel like I can't stand by and just watch and let that harm continue. So that's it. And we do have one other member panelist that we're hoping is still able to join us. Sequoia, I'm not sure if you can hear us, but
Oh, there's Sequoia.
Hi.
Hi.
hi, Sequoia.
What a day.
Yeah. Well, Sequoia, I'm not sure if you're able to hear, but we're just all introduced ourselves. So before moving on, do you want to just say hi and tell us, you know, a little about you and why you're doing this work?
Sure. I'm a mother. I'm a poet. I was a mental health nurse counselor for about 33 years. And somehow, even in my civilian life, I find myself still doing that work, which is a privilege. I am indebted to Nikkei Progressives and Kenneth in particular, because I wasn't very familiar with reparations work. Of course, you know, the standard, I want my 40 acres and a mule mantra, which most African Americans, Black Americans grew up saying. I really did not know a lot about the reparations work. So the past year or so has been a lot about educating myself around reparations, the various efforts that go back many, many, many years. I understand even as far back as Ferdinand, and I don't remember what the Queen's name was, way back in Spain. There were Africans advocating for reparations. So it's not something that just came about. And the reason I am doing the work is because I'm still alive. I still have life. And I come from a tradition that says as long as you can do something, that part of the responsibility is to do something. Now, what I do is different in the sense that I find that I'm most effective one-on-one when I talk to people. I am part of an arts organization, which is called the World Stage Performance Gallery in Leimert Park. And I've raised the issue of reparations, certainly in my own work. And it's also about having some sensitivity about the culture. What I recognize about my community, in particular, the arts community and the world stage in particular, is we use that, many of us use it like almost therapy. And people get a little edgy when issues around organizing, because let me just say this, people come there because they want to get away from the problems, so to speak, and to have to come and talk about the painful stuff, even though we do it in an artistic way. So it's really, it's a different kind of organizing, but it happens, and the conversation and the issue around reparations is being brought up more and more. So I think I've extended my 75 words or less. So I'll just catch my breath. I was in the urgent care all day today. I'm still alive though, so I'm grateful. Okay. I apologize for being late. I tried to get on in the taxi, but no Wi-Fi.
Oh, Sequoia, we're happy you made it, and I hope
Thank
you're
you.
okay.
Yeah.
This blood pressure stuff, and everybody's blood pressure is probably up with what's going on in the world. So.
Right.
Mm. Well, thank you for making it. I'm happy you're here. And yeah, that's, everyone in our panel, right, for today. So we're all coming from different perspectives with different backgrounds, but ultimately, we're all united by our commitment to this work. And what my job right now is to do is say a little bit about just why Nikkei Progressives and NCRR even started this reparations committee. And it actually formed 3 years ago, summer 2020. And, we just came together based on 3 core beliefs. We don't have time to go into them, but happy to talk more about in the Q&A. But, we believe that reparations are owed, centuries of harm. So they're owed. We believe that they're long overdue. As Sequoia said, there've been movements for reparations for generations. And we believe that they're possible, as seen by the Japanese American Redress movement. So those are really our core beliefs. And again, we'll talk more about it later. But then also just wanted to shout out that in addition to Nikkei Progressives and NCRR, there's a national, let's make sure I get this right, National Nikkei Reparations Coalition. So what that is just even more Japanese American orgs coming together to sort of, do this work, solidarity work, and to support reparations for African Americans. And that is this National Nikkei Reparations Coalition is really the first time that a lot of these Japanese American organizations, JCL, Tour for Solidarity, Nikkei Progressives, coming together and really doing this sustained work. So it's exciting. But anyway, we got to get on with the program. So I'm just going to introduce what we're going to show. So we're going to show really brief clips from the 1980s CWRIC hearings, so the Commission on Wartime Relocation and Internment of Civilian hearings, which, were the result of the Japanese American redress movement and really asking Congress and, the government to let survivors, camp survivors, and their descendants testify. So Kay is going to talk more about this. So I'll just leave it at that. So please, just take a look at these videos, and they'll give you a sense for the kind of testimonies that these commission hearings can offer.
My name is Martha Okamoto. Sorry, I will try very hard, excuse me. My brother, in regards to my brother James, who was killed in Manzanar, I've never been able to talk about this. More people have come up to me and said I must speak up. My children, even my own children, don't know that my brother was shot in the back.
On December 7, 1941, we were the only Japanese American family in Kodiak, Alaska. In a short time, my father and two uncles were arrested and put in concentration camps in the United States. We were not told where they were sent. They lost all their property, their house, the boat's equipment, and everything. I have never seen my father since. I have been trying to find him, been trying to locate him. And what happened to him, I don't know, and have been unsuccessful so far. I am very bitter about this. I have not seen my father since I was 11 years old. I am now 51 years old. I have missed my father very much. And I wonder, I wonder if he's alive today.
On a personal basis, I sincerely appreciate what you've done. But we're not talking on a personal basis right now. So you're trying to hurry me, and I will not be hurried by you as a representative of this government ever. Well, now you want me to leave, you can tell me to leave.
No, I'm not telling. There's no point in getting.
Well, don't rush us.
No, I'm not trying to rush you. As a matter of fact, I think if
I've been rushed by this government enough.
Well, sir, I want to assure you.
If you didn't want this position, you volunteered for it.
Well,
So you know what some of these old men said? The old men say, hey, they feeding us because we're going to die. They're going to kill us. You know, just like the execution chamber before you die. Yeah, that's what he said. So, but that's why I thought, no. This country ain't going to do that kind of stuff, man. You know, it's a democratic country, Bill of Rights, constitutional, and all that. Just go with it, see? So they're not going to do it. This is democracy. You know what one woman say? No, this is not democracy. This is democracy, he said. He said, so by God, maybe this guy, he got a point, I said. No, he might be right. And then we get off the train. When we got off the train,
as a clinician in the field of mental health, I tried to understand why so many Americans, Japanese and otherwise, were able to justify, rationalize, and deny the injustice and the destructiveness of the whole event. I have come to the realization that we lulled ourselves into believing the propaganda of the 1940s so that we could maintain our idealized image of a benevolent, protective Uncle Sam. We were told that we were being put away for our own safety. We were told that this was a patriotic sacrifice necessary for national security. The pain, trauma, and stress of the incarceration experience was so overwhelming. We used the psychological defense mechanisms of repression, denial, and rationalization to keep us from facing the truth. The truth was that the government we trusted, the country we loved, the nation to which we had pledged loyalty had betrayed us, had turned against us. Our natural human feelings of rage, fear, and helplessness were turned inward and buried.
No one benefits when truth is silent. The bigots and uninformed demagogues and persecutors will become increasingly suppressive and abusive, attempting to diminish our characters through crude jokes and half-truths. I will be proud to be a Japanese, and I would want to be equally proud to be an American. I do hope my late father's ideals and expectations for this country will someday be realized.
Yeah, thank you all for watching. It's a lot, but this is such an important time for Japanese American camp survivors and their descendants to really break the silence. But I'm actually just going to turn things over to Kay, if you want to offer a response.
Yes, this was back in 1981, and here we are in 2023. And I had the good fortune of being there at the commission hearings. I lived in Los Angeles, and it was an event that I had no idea what I was going to. I just knew that if it talked about Japanese wartime incarceration, I needed to go. It's like I lived in this black hole. I didn't know anything about it, and my parents didn't talk about it. Certainly it wasn't taught about in the schools. And that day just really changed my entire life. When I heard these testimonies, and what you saw was 5 minutes. Through good fortune, NCRR, the Nikkei Redress and Reparations, worked with Visual Communications, the oldest API media company in this country, that's based in Los Angeles. We filmed all of the Los Angeles hearings. That's a gold mine. I call it our community treasure because not only do we have our real history, not the whitewashed history that we would be fed, but actually what the survivors had to say about their experiences. It changed everything for me. It angered me. I wept. I mean, even 40 years later, they still make me very emotional to see. And a side note, the people in that 5-minute clip, Jim Matsuoka, the person who slammed his fist, is a longtime NCRR member. And it was with that kind of energy and anger that he helped to lead us as a Nisei who went through the camps. The fellow in the white shirt, Charlie Hamasaki, who talked about this is not a democracy. That's my uncle. And it just all feels like my family. Every single person in the testimonies, it feels like my family. I've heard them so many times, cherished it always. And it's, super emotional for me. I do want to say that NCRR helped a lot in 1981. But just to go wind it back a little bit, it was in 79 that the Nikkei legislators, Mineta, Matsui, Inoue, Matsunaga particularly, worked with the JACL, the Japanese American Citizens League, with this idea of a commission. NCRR formed in 1980, but we weren't in love with this idea. We really kind of pushed back because we thought it was another stall tactic by the JACL, another equivocation from the fight that was already building to demand redress and reparations. And of course, we the commission happened and we changed our minds completely. So we got on board and we helped. We wanted it to be the most effective and be the most important for the people who actually survived. So we did everything that we could, particularly in Los Angeles, San Francisco, and the Bay Area, where we had large constituencies of NCRR. And we provided simultaneous translation for Japanese speakers, our eldest Japanese American survivors. We provided an evening session for people who work during the day. That kind of makes sense. We made sure that accommodations were made for everyone. And then with other organizations, we encouraged people to speak. You can imagine after 40 years, well, I'll tell you, nobody wanted to speak. It was like we got the responses, let it be. It's, it's done. It's over with. We've moved on with our lives. And it took a lot of effort and encouragement to get people to step forward and speak. I don't think too many of us really love public speaking. And so for these folks who are our friends, our family, are just regular folks, they had never done public speaking like this before. It was difficult, but they stepped up, they spoke out, which is such a huge credit, because I believe without those testimonies, the approximately 155 people in Los Angeles, without their testimonies, I don't think I'd be here today. I would not be sitting in this space with you, because it so moved me. I could do nothing but join NCRR on that very day. I was not a member. I didn't know anyone. I just was fortunate to be there. And I believe 40 years later, that's why I'm still in the room. I continue to learn about the depths of the pain, what the government perpetrated on a community based on the race. And so I do say that working with NCRR and working with the grassroots, which is really, really important, that in our organization, we had truck drivers, we had farmers, well, gardeners, housewives, teachers. None of us were paid. It was an all volunteer organization. And unless you've got the passion for this, it really was a passion project. How do we stay together, for all these decades? And how do we take our lessons and share them and put them into action with others who have, had similar or worse injustices, as is the case today? I'm going to take a pause. Tell me what else I'm supposed to. NCR's role, certainly in the hearings was great. If there were questions that you wanted to ask me about the commission hearings or comments that you have, your own reaction to the testimonies, I'd really love to hear those.
Kay, I've seen portions of the tape before, but this is the first time I can remember hearing Mr. Yoshida speak when he spoke about not seeing his father since he was 11. And I think he said he was 45 at the time. And
yes,
what that feels like to be torn away from your family and to never see them again, or to be torn away from your land and never be able to return. So I feel that viscerally, because it's part of my story. It's part of our story and so many others. So it's really touched me. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Sequoia, because had he not participated, we may not have learned about the story of the Alaskan Japanese and the family separation and the extent of his pain because of the family separation caused by Executive Order 9066, which was completely politically and economically motivated and completely not necessary, which we have learned through the decades. For the government to have subjected people like Iwan Yoshida to that kind of lifelong pain, is just unspeakably horrible. Do others have any reactions you'd like to share?
I'd like to weigh in also. First and foremost, it infuriates me to even think that this country would use such horrific propaganda as to tell folk, we're doing this for your safety. This is for your protection. And if that's the case, the conditions under which your ancestors and your elders lived, there's no amount of money that can rectify that, make it right. But this country has to, at some point, be made to stand and to be accountable for the egregious crimes that indeed are against humanity. This isn't just a war crime. This is a crime against humanity. And I thought about the person who said, I have never seen my father again. I don't know where he is. And for me, it brought down front for me the fact that the journey on those human cargo vessels and the 2 million plus of our ancestors who are at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean, who never ever got to return to the motherland, the continent, and who never made it to this land of captivity are there, and nobody knows their name. And if we really want to be honest with ourselves, they are the beginning of cold cases that are unsolved in this country. And just sitting here and looking, I like Sequoia, I've seen this before, and every time I see it, it just brings tears to my eyes, because I this country bothers me in ways I cannot articulate at this time. But thank you for, having been there.
Thank you. Thanks for that sharing. And I'll do a shout out to Visual Communications, and we can probably share it in the chat later, but that all of the testimonies from Los Angeles are easily available for everyone at vcmedia.org, and we will write that down somewhere. And you will hear stories. That 5 minutes was just the tip of the iceberg, because even in Los Angeles, you'll hear such heartbreaking stories of why did the government, well, it makes you question, why did the government have to take a 7-year-old orphan from an orphanage in Los Angeles away from the only family he had ever known, the nuns, and throw him into Manzanares Children's Village. His testimony, and he actually ended up living in San Diego, so I'm very familiar with his testimony, how the encampment, how the incarceration really ruined his life, and for all of his life. There are so many stories, babies dying in the hands of a doctor because it was at the beginning of the encampment and there were not enough medical supplies. And so babies dying of dehydration. It's just endless. I can go on forever, but I won't. I can now toss it back to our moderators to give us direction.
Thank you, Kay. So we dropped the link in the chat, the link from Visual Communications that Kay was mentioning. Highly recommend checking those videos out. It's actually quite amazing. We have all the footage. I know there were other cities that the testimonies happened in, like Chicago, for example, which I don't believe has any footage at all. So this is all actually done by grassroots organizers, knowing that these things would be really important to have, for the future. And so the government did not supply any sort of resources for this. It was completely grassroots led. So it's actually quite amazing that we have all these things. So please take a look at that. We also have this. There's also this amazing book that details the struggle in much more detail with first person perspectives. I think you can get this on the JANM website or your local bookstore, probably, if you live in certain areas. I think Berkeley especially. I highly recommend looking at these resources. And I think speaking from like people who are maybe younger, like me, Jen, and Miyako in this chat, just thinking about, we did like a 40th anniversary event 2 years ago about the CWRC hearings, and I think that was the first time that a lot of us really actually saw this footage like really in depth for the first time. And it's hard to really understand what these things are like and how momentous it felt, just to be witness to all those testimonies, especially from histories of folks who have been deemed in some ways maybe to be like a little bit shyer, or they're just a silence that people have held on for so long, and to see the vibrancy and the anger and all the emotions sort of spill out like that is just really actually amazing to have. I think in the interest of time, I think maybe when we can pick this back up, I think a little bit later. But in the interest of time, I want to transition us a little bit to talk about NCOBRA and sort of the Black reparations movement from the perspective of Kenneth. We are so lucky to have Kenneth here as a long time organizer. So please take it away, Kenneth, and do your thing.
Sure, thank you. I am the national co-chair for NCOBRA. NCOBRA has been in the movement for reparations for the past 36 years. 33 of those 36 years, we have gone to Capitol Hill with whomever the bill sponsor has been. Mostly it has been the Honorable late John Conyers. And when he retired, it became Sheila Jackson Lee. Excuse me. For 33 years, we have gone asking for one thing, and that is to have H.R. 40 signed into law to stand up a commission. It is a $20 million commission. This country spends more than that buying coffee and tea and bagels for meetings that they have. It's $20 million. In December of 2022, last year, we would see H.R. 40 have 217 co-sponsors. It does not get any better than that. We had 196 on the books, bill sponsor 197, and we had 20 confirmed elected officials who said, if you take it to the floor, we will come during the debates and we will vote yes to take it out of, to take it and send it over to the Senate side. We could not get House leadership, that's Nancy Pelosi, Steny Hoyer, and James Clyburn, to take H.R. 40 to the floor for debates. So December 31st, 2022, H.R. 40 would die because there was an unwillingness to take it to the floor for debates. How sad is that? It's very sad. When we look around and we see whatever is going on as far as other organizations are concerned, we are always told that the reason we cannot move forward with H.R. 40 is because that was then and this is now. And we just don't have living witnesses who can confirm the allegations of slavery, the brutality, and the actual egregiousness of 256 years of forced stolen labor where our ancestors did not receive not one penny. We are also told that who knows whether it even happened or not. Maybe there was no slavery, but we know that we have scholars, not the least of which is Ta-Nehisi Coates. We have many scholars who have been able to do the research and have proven that these 400 years of pernicious history did exist. So when you say there are no living witnesses, as in the Jewish Holocaust, where they went and they, testified with pain and conviction and passion, you don't have that, with people of African descent. But let's look at Black Wall Street, the massacre of Black Wall Street. 3 living survivors. And I want to lift up the youngest of those 3 survivors who recently passed, Albert Ellis. May he rest in peace, for he surely deserves it. Capitol Hill, testifying with grace and elegance. At the state level, they've testified repeatedly, trying to get reparations, restitution, compensation for the ills that they saw as little children in their community. The entire community burned, devastated, and just completely demolished and destroyed. Nothing. So which one is it? Is it you have to have living survivors in order to be able to get this compensation and this restitution? Or is it that was then and this is now, and there is no in between? Why is it that when it comes to people of African descent, we hear this, well, that was then and this is now? I didn't live back then in that time. I wasn't, an enslaver. So therefore, why should I have to be a part of a reparatory justice program? This is about reparative, it is about restorative, and definitely it's about transformative, because there can be no society unless we're all on equal footing. We, people of African descent, we're fighting for the right to be able to fight for equality. We don't even have the right to fight for equality. Callie House fought for and was a staunch advocate for reparations. This country put her in prison and charged her with mail fraud. But in 1892, I don't have anything going on. In 1892, the seated president of these here United States awarded reparations to 11 Italian American families because their family lost a member who was lynched in 1891. $25,000, which is now worth $124,000. But not only did they get reparations, the seated president gave a holiday, a national holiday, so that his desire was to be known as the foreign affairs president. Reparations, and he gave a national holiday. So when we talk about the fairness of the situation, it's not just that you tell me I can't get it because there are no living survivors. It's you tell me that, but then others get reparations. And if you would just show the news article title, I just want to talk about that also. There's a news article title that I shared with you all. And if you could just show that title, that would be great. So when we talk about this is now, or this is, that was then and this is now, there is actually a situation in Italy where in 1943, there were German soldiers who killed some Italian civilians, and this is 1943. In 2015, some of the families of these Italian soldiers who lost their lives decided that they were going to see if they could get restitution for the loss of their family members. 80 years prior, just about, in 2015, they filed a lawsuit alleging that the loss of these family members were war crimes. This is 2015, from 1943. 2020, the verdict came down, yes, these are war crimes, and there will be an award. The article that's in the chat speaks to that. This year, it was decided that the families who applied for some sort of compensation for the loss of family members are going to get $142,000 in January because it was decided that these are war crimes. Again, this is just a small piece of what we're talking about when we talk about 400 years. We're not just talking about something that happened as a one-off. This is 400 years in the continuation of the victimization of people of African descent. So what is the real reason, excuse me, what is the real reason for why we cannot get a $20 million commission? And the commission is to study the allegations that we allege are true. 256 years of forced-free labor, the brutality, the rapes, the body dismemberment, the breeding farms, all of these things. 400 years in the continuation of victimization. That was then, this is now. So let me give you another example of a that was then, this is now. 21 years after Haiti defeated France, France went to Haiti and said, I want reparations. We want reparations. 125 years of reparations. Haiti paid France 125 years. At the time of this request, there were 9,000 enslavers. Who amongst you believes that those 9,000 enslavers lived long enough to receive 125 years of reparations? No one believes that. Maybe the average age at that time was 55. They didn't live 125 years. So ask yourself, what happened after the last person of the enslavers died? Where did the rest of the reparations payments go? Dare I tell you? To the descendants. Year after year, descendants of the enslavers continue to receive reparatory compensation. And you tell me that was then and this is now? That's impossible. That's absolutely impossible. There are descendants in France who have been interviewed. Their wealth, where did it come from? They have no idea. They just know they woke up one day and they were wealthy. Blood money. So when we talk about that was then and this is now, why is it that it only happens when it is people of African descent? And we're looking at 217 co-sponsors and we can't get our legislation passed into law. And lastly, because I'm sure my time is just about up, lastly, we have tried to get an executive order. Our president, who says, if you don't know Joe, you're not Black, has decided that he's not going to give us an executive order. He was in the Senate for years, decades, and he has decreed that what he wants to see happen is that this goes through the legislative process. Now, he knows it cannot go through the legislative process. If it didn't make it last year with 217 co-sponsors, it will not make it this time around when we have about 99 co-sponsors. We have an amazing piece of legislation that Cori Bush sponsored. It is a resolution that says, this is what reparations can look like. And it's also stalled. So again, that was then and this is now. How do we reconcile that was then and this is now when it comes to 125 years of reparation payments for France and 80 years later, and reparations is international, so it doesn't matter whether it happened in Mississippi or in Italy. 80 years later, these families are going to get $142,000 for war crimes. And what we're talking about are crimes against humanity. So when we talk about solidarity, I stand in solidarity with you all. And anybody who knows me knows you're my family. I'm not just standing in solidarity because you're comrades. I'm not standing in solidarity because you're peers or colleagues. You're family. When I look in the mirror, I see the reflection of you because your story is my story. And that's how solidarity should be. If you look in the mirror, you should not see yourself. You should see the person whose story mirrors your story. And to that end, I want to close this by saying, not only do I stand in solidarity with you, I stand in solidarity with my Palestinian family. Their story is my story. My story is their story. And lastly, I stand in solidarity with the countries in West Africa who were told that they had independence, but France, as an example, stayed there and said, hey, we're partners. We're here because we have this amazing partnership with you, when the only thing they were practicing was another form of colonization. Because the treatment, as you see now, the way they treated and continue to treat some of the countries who have not stood up yet was simply neo-colonization. So until we are in solidarity, we cannot accomplish the victories that must be accomplished. And for that, I want to profoundly thank you for giving me this opportunity to be in your space. Thank you.
Thank you, Kenneth. Every time I hear Kenneth speak, she just brings me on like such a wild journey with all the feelings, and I always learn like 10 new things and have so much to look up afterward. So thank you, Kenneth, for always sharing such knowledge with us. And I think after following that, I'm gonna bring us to the section on the history of movement and solidarity. So kind of what we watched before on the CWRIC clips, the first time that I saw them was also a couple years ago, and something that I found really fascinating was not only were there so many, of course, Japanese Americans who testified, but there were also people from other communities who testified, such as people from the Latino community, the Black community, and of course, the Japanese American struggle for reparations could not have been possible without the foundation laid by the Civil Rights Movement, as well as the support of Black legislators such as Mervyn Dimely. So with that, I want to ask our panelists, what does solidarity look like to you? And how have your understandings of solidarity developed over time?
I'll jump in. I think being a OG, I think being an OG, I look back at such groups as the Black Panthers. I think that was as close to being the epitome of solidarity as I can remember back in those days. I mean, they looked out for the community. They looked out for the children. They had after-school programs. They had the breakfast program. That to me was a sense of solidarity on that level. But today, I'm at a place where we have to work, I think, to get back to a place where we actually have solidarity across racial lines and inside each of our own ethnic groups. And in order to get there, we just have to be more accepting. We have to be more flexible. We have to be resilient, and we have to be compassionate. Because unless you walk in my shoes and I walk in your shoes, I'm not sure that you really do appreciate solidarity. Thank you.
Yes.
Sequoia?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. The concept of Tadaima, I looked up the word and you guys told me what it means. And the whole idea of home is such a universal concept, whatever the word is, but of home. It's so central to our identities, knowing where home is, having a home, being able to stay home, go back home. When I met Mike Marase and Evelyn Yoshimura and Craig Wong and others when I first got involved in the anti-apartheid movement, I wasn't clear on why they were at the meetings when I got there. But I soon began to learn the commonalities. And really core is the whole experience of being torn away from your home, from your base. There's something about having shared experiences that knit us together, that translate in a way that someone that hasn't had that experience or is not part of a group that had that experience needs additional translation. But there's something about having lived it, whether it was 5 generations ago or 2 generations ago is that transcends even language. So home is an important piece of solidarity. It suggests a safe haven, a comfort zone, a place where we can be ourselves without apology, without trying to win the most biggest influencer contest or whatever it is that some people are going through now. Everybody wants to be an influencer. A place where just your being, just your presence is an influence. A place of simpatico, which is, when I hear that word in Spanish, it has deeper meaning than sympathetic. It's deep. It's like duende. It's something that comes up through the sole of your feet. It's very essential. A place where we can see and be seen. For so many of us, people of color, we're not seen. Not really. We're not even human.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
A place where we learn, a place where we teach. When I first got involved in organizing politics, I used to be kind of a little maybe embarrassed about talking about words like love and stuff like that, because I didn't hear a lot of people using those words, but it was something that resonated with me. Because when you really have compassion and you really care, I think that's really important, and I refuse to let the oppressor steal that from us, because it's essential. It's essential to what we do, whether we articulate it all the time or not. And I'm reminded of a quote by June Jordan, famous writer, educator. And she said, "My heart is not peripheral to me." So at the center of solidarity is our hearts. So, yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate your shout out to our friends Mike Marase and Evelyn, and the connection, the real solidarity there. And I think there are many other instances of that, just as about the anti-apartheid movement in the 80s, when NCR took a large delegation to Washington, D.C. in 87 to lobby. We actually took as many in the delegation that could, and went to the consulate to protest about the apartheid. And all these Japanese Americans were marching with signs up and down the street in front of the African consulate. And people may not have gotten the connection. But, you articulate it well, because I think our group certainly knew in our hearts that that's, was important to do. And it wasn't all about just our issue, Japanese Americans, because it really, goes all around. And I want to do a shout out to another name that was mentioned. That was Mervyn Dimely. Now, Michael Lowry, who is Caucasian American from Washington State, introduced the first redress bill in 1978. But then the second redress bill was introduced by Mervyn Dimely from the Compton, Gardena area. And he became a close friend of NCRR. And he wanted to learn. He wanted to learn so he would know this issue and be able to support it. And he did, in a great, great way. And it's not just the legislators like Ron Dellums also, who was a huge supporter. And the Congressional Black Caucus, those are like the main leaders, the figureheads. But even in the communities, our alliances and friendships with community folk in the Black community or Hispanic community, Latino community, have meant a lot to us. And we got criticized. I do want to say that the other redress organizations in the 80s criticized us, NCRR, because we were too left, we were too progressive. And we diverted attention from the main focus, which is JA reparations, by supporting these other groups. We had part of our Day of Remembrance, or a program, was in support of Indigenous people at Big Mountain. And this was in the 80s. And we got criticism because they could not understand why we would dilute our issues with that. And that just goes in one example of how far away we were from the other redress organizations. But we feel that I think it was said earlier, and Japanese Americans would not have achieved reparations in 1988 had it not been for the support from diverse communities, religious organizations, etc. And I remember that. I'll always remember that. So.
Thank you all for speaking so far. I just wanted to maybe add a really quick line. So as somebody who, relatively speaking, is sort of, joining this work more recently in the last 5 years, I think one of the most important things that I've learned and that you all are teaching me right now is that I was so scared when I first started organizing or, just attending meetings to say the wrong thing or to, make sure what do all these acronyms stand for? Or, I just felt like I had to do everything right. And I think by working with all of you and Sequoia, I love that you said love, but really feeling the love and feeling the relationships building, you realize solidarity isn't just about doing things right, but it's about, doing the right thing and just trying and just putting yourself out there and just trying really hard and really being open to learning, being open to making mistakes, and then just trusting that love is the foundation, and the compassion is the foundation. So that's what I would say for anyone who, is thinking I just want to join an organization or do something, but I don't know how. I would just say, don't worry about doing it right. Just get out there and just try to start, building those relationships. So I'll stop there.
Yeah. I just want to say, Jen, that love has gotten a bad rap, what we call love in this society. So often it's tough love, it's having conversations and being confronted with our own contradictions, because we all have them. But to know that contradictions can be a basis of strengthening our ties. It's because if the elephant is in the middle of the room and nobody's talking about it, that's not very healthy. So part of love is to challenge one another also. And oftentimes people might not consider that love, but it is, It's if you got some shit in your teeth and you walking around and I'm not going to say nothing and I'm your person. I mean, that's kind of a gross example, but so we pull each other's coats. Yeah.
And I think something that I was thinking about is just also the sort of messiness of a lot of this. I know Jim was speaking about not being sure sometimes of saying the wrong thing or whatever. And I think because a lot of this is very messy, right? There's a lot of histories that are intertangled that we don't know maybe the whole thing. And so it's great to be in spaces like this where we get to share these experiences, right, and see how connected they are. And I think I'm so glad, Sequoia, that you brought up, Tadaima. I'm remembering that this is the sort of framing of our conversation, and just thinking about the right of return, especially right now with Palestinian folks. And I hope people have been out in the streets and showing support, because I think like Jen was saying, so much of this is literally just showing up and just making known that you will be there for folks and knowing people. I think even during the last month or so, getting to know Palestinian folks on a more deeper personal level has helped so much with organizing and doing, the things, because actually being in community with people is like so important to, sustaining that sort of energy. So yeah, that's what I want to say. And then, so we're running very short on time. So I just wanted to quickly pass to Kenneth for any sort of updates on recent legislation or movement around AB 3121, the California Reparations Coalition Task Force, or anything else that people should know about.
Sure, thank you. I actually just had a conversation with Dr. Grills, and it looks like right now AB 3121 is stalled a little bit. And lesson learned, once it was completed, there were no next steps per se. So even though there were 2 legislators on the task force, apparently there are no there's no budget, there's no funding for any next steps. So there are some serious discussions on how to move forward, how we're going to fund moving forward, that kind of thing. And knowing that group, I'm sure they will come through on the other side very well. But it's just a lesson learned. California was the first state, and Dr. Grills shares many lessons learned about that 2-year experience. I was in New York on Friday. The reparations legislation in the state of New York, the governor has been sitting on it since June 10th. It is 7 pages long. That's the entirety of the bill itself. And she's maintained that she needs to read the bill, study the bill, and decide whether she can sign it into law or not. And again, what we're talking about is, for me, it's a stall tactic. And what I have learned is, if the bill does not get signed into law by December 31st, it technically dies. I have heard that possibly the General Assembly may be able to revive it and override her lack of activity. I don't know. But as I listen to look at the clip, it's interesting that what happened, I told you I was in New York, and there were some hot tempers that flared, and et cetera, et cetera. These are all indicative of the trauma and the pain and the hurt that, even though you went through and you have your hearings and you got reparations, the trauma is still there. It never, ever goes away. And to have 400 years and not to have any kind of opportunity for restitution, for sure, it's still there. And I learned so much every time I'm in New York about the history of New York as far as the enslavement is concerned. There are several states and local municipalities that seem to be doing some very positive things as far as local reparations are concerned. It is important that I point out to you there is a bill in Congress that is very, very troubling to me, and that is H.R. 4321. It is a bill that was introduced by some Republican congressfolk from Texas. And the bill says that any place reparations are stood up, federal funding will cease and desist. So if there is, as an example, let's look at Evanston right quickly. Evanston would be a prime example because they did stand up a form of reparatory justice. So if that bill is passed, all federal funding to the state of Illinois will cease and desist. And just think about that, just for a second. What will that do for this country? because it is potentially going to be the basis for maybe race war, because those people who get federal funding in the form of Medicaid, SNAP benefits, education, the carceral system, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, they are going to look at people who look like me and blame me because they can no longer get SNAP benefits. They can no longer get Medicaid, which is your health care, or your dental care for your children, or whatever the case may be. This is very, very troubling. And it doesn't have anything to do with reparations, but it does, because the very core of this legislation is, if reparations are stood up, then all federal funding will cease. H.R. 40, it's coming along. It is too late for an executive order, even though folk are still asking for an executive order. The commission is 18 months long. We don't have 18 months between now and the end of next year. So it's a little bit dicey, because if we even got an executive order and the next person in the Oval Office does not support reparations, they could easily go in and their first act be to sign an executive order to overturn an executive order for H.R. 40. So we are looking at what are some other avenues that we can take to hopefully get to where we need to be successfully. So that's a roundup of some things that are going on with reparations throughout the country.
Thank you so much, Kenneth. So much information. Yeah, that's good, and also harrowing to know all of these different things that are happening. So I believe we have a few minutes remaining on our time. I'm curious to know if there are any questions anybody watching live might have that we could answer. Our amazing, panelists here would probably be very eager to share. If not, we can just keep talking. We can just keep going, because we're happy to have this conversation, on our own time too. Or if anyone on the panel has a question for anyone else too, please.
I'd like to just add that one of the first steps NCR took when it joined, in the support of the Black reparations, was education, learning. You don't just get birth knowing it all, so it took reading and studying, and as a group we did it, and it was enjoyable and shocking and informative. But it's all about learning, and hearkening back to the 80s when we first started reparations, we could not even get Japanese Americans to talk about reparations until we shared the commission tapes, and they heard people tell their stories, and they learned it was okay to tell their story. I think that for everyone who is out in the audience too, if you continue learning about the different people and injustices, you're going to really come to the heart moment when you feel it. And I just really want to encourage people to invest that time. It's really, really important time spent.
And Kay, you're absolutely correct. I was looking at one of the podcasts, and the person who does the podcast made the general statement that Pan-Africans who live in America, who are Black, know nothing about their history. And they didn't even know that there were Black people in America before 1619. I was so upset by that. I rarely post a response, but I had to post a response. I am Pan-African, I am Black, I live in America. And yes, I know that there were Black people here before 1619. There were Black people here before 1492, when Christopher Columbus lied and said that he discovered America. So it comes from, as you said, reading and peeling back the layers and actually getting that information and getting it correctly. So I thank you for raising that.
Certainly.
Thanks. I think we had a question in the chat too from Julie. who said, what can we do to get involved? And I know that Tadaima is kind of like a, virtual kind of organization, or like have a lot of virtual programming. So people might be coming from, anywhere in the world watching this program right now. So there are, of course, the NNRC, which is the National Nikkei Reparations Coalition, that you can look it up, and I think anyone's able to join, but you can also join more local Nikkei organizations or other organizations doing reparations work. So if you're in the LA area, for example, Nikkei Progressives, NCRR Joint Reparations Committee. Also, we do a lot of education work, such as like workshops for people in other organizations who want to learn more about Black reparations, and especially in the Japanese American solidarity context. You can feel free to reach out to nikkeiprogressives@gmail.com if you want to join and get involved with that. I think there's, aside from Black reparations, and as we've been talking about, there's a lot going on with the Palestinian solidarity right now too. So I encourage everyone to get involved with that. For that, there may be a Nikkei Progressives sip and share that we haven't quite announced yet. So hopefully I'm allowed to say that. But there's also, I want to shout out Vigilant Love for Muslim and Japanese American solidarity work too. So there's a lot going on, and just keep an eye out, I guess, on Nikkei Progressives socials and newsletter too.
Yeah, and very fundamentally, Julie, is to not turn away, because the weight of the despair is enormous. So we don't turn away.
And very basically, Julie, educate, read. And while you have to fact check, there's some amazing YouTube videos that are very, very accurate, and they give you a lot of historical foundation and basics about reparations in general, why reparations, the history of the African American struggle, as well as I'm going to be looking at all of the recordings on vcmedia.org. Somehow or another, I know you've told this before, I must have missed it, but I got it. I'm going to look at that because it does enhance my knowledge. So there are lots of ways, Julie, that you can get involved. And as Sequoia said, just don't be shy. Just put yourself out there.
Great. Did anyone else want to add any final comments? Okay. Well, thank you all so much. I'm just going to end with Sequoia and Kenneth's words of, put yourself out there, don't look away. And yeah, thank you all for coming. And please do be in contact if you have any questions. Yes, Michael, Miyako, am I missing something?
I don't think so. But yeah, thank you so much to Sequoia, Kenneth, and Kay for all your knowledge and wisdom. And I could listen to you talk forever, and can't wait till we can hang out again.
Thanks all. Yeah, and thank you to the Tadaima organizers for having us as well. Thanks so much.
Yes, thank you, Tadaima.
Thank you.